everybody. This meeting of the CRTPA Board for February 17th, 2026 is called to order. Our chair is running about 10 minutes late, so on the advice of council, I'm going to go ahead and call recess, and then once our chair and vice chair arrive, we'll resume our meeting. So this meeting is now in recess. Thank you.
Tardiness, I had to go pick up my child. She decided she didn't want to stay the rest of the day at school today. So the meeting's been called to order at 1:30. We are in recess. Let the record show that we called the meeting back into order from recess at 1:44 p.m. Have we taken care of any of the business items?
No, sir.
Okie dokie, let's do roll call.
Commissioner Cox? Lori Cox?
Oh, present.
Commissioner Goldwire?
Here.
Commissioner O'Keefe?
Present.
Commissioner Maddox? Commissioner
Here.
Minor?
Here.
Commissioner Matlow?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson? Here. And Commissioner Williams Cox?
Here.
All right. Any agenda modifications?
No, Chairman, we do not. I would ask you, the control room reminded me to lean into your microphone when you speak because they have a hard time hearing outside of this room.
Absolutely. Any agenda modifications?
No, sir.
Any public comment?
No, sir.
Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and go to consent agenda. Is there a motion for consent? Motion been made by Commissioner Richardson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by School Board member Lawson Cox. Any objection?
Mr. Chair, real quick, Suzanne, just want to provide a couple of quick items or updates on the consent agenda.
Okay, Suzanne?
I just want to let you know the UPWP will be posted online after this meeting, and I have added an organizational chart and a draft schedule of projects to the UPWP, but at adoption, of course, in May, everything will be finalized. Thank you.
All right. Any objection to the motion on the floor? Seeing none, show it is approved unanimously. We'll move now to consent items pulled. None were pulled. We have none on the roll call agenda. CRTPA action, CRTPA safety targets. Mr. Slay.
Yes, sir. Just real quick, Mr. Burke's going to provide you all a presentation of our safety performance measures this year. These are an annual adoption that's required by federal law, and they're due to DOT, I believe, February 27th this year. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Burke and let him go through them.
Great. Good afternoon, members. As Mr. Slay told you, every year our agency, as you all will recall, is required to adopt safety targets for the following 5 safety performance measures. Those are number of fatalities, number of serious injuries, their corresponding rates, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Now, with regards to this effort annually, the CRTPA, as does other MPOs within the state of Florida, has 2 options. We can support the targets developed by the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT. FDOT has consistently adopted a target of 0 for each of the 5 safety performance measures, or we can actually adopt our own. Now, since 2018, when was the first time the CRTPA was required to adopt safety targets, this agency has chosen to actually adopt our own. Now, to that end, consistent with CRTPA board direction, the safety targets have been developed for 2026, and those reflect a 5% reduction annually from last year's targets. So what you actually see there are the draft targets, safety targets, reduced 5% from last year's previous ones. Also consistent with the last few years, staff is recommending that we adopt a long-term safety goal of 0 fatalities and serious injuries for the CRTPA region, and this kind of brings the CRTPA's safety targets in line with Vision 0 of FDOT. Now, official data for use in both target development as well as target achievement is based on a 5-year rolling out average from data that we actually receive from the FDOT. Most recent data is from 2020 to 2024. And compared to last year's 5-year rolling data, what we find is that fatalities have been going up, serious injuries have been going down, and pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and serious injuries have been going up. Long-term 5-year average data over the last 7 or 8 years pretty much confirms these trends. What you see there is the 5-year average of annual fatalities showing that those have increased, as I told you. However, looking at these yearly, we seem to see that in 2025, which is not yet official data, it appears that annual fatalities are going down. So we should see that reflected in next year's 5-year data. With regards to 5-year average serious injuries, as I mentioned, those are going down, and you see that in that chart. Combined pedestrian and bicycle 5-year average fatalities and serious injuries, again, are going up. However, if we with this data for vulnerable road users, which again are pedestrians and bicyclists, if we evaluate this annually and separate those modes out, we see a more complete picture. Now, with regards to 2025, the data shows that pedestrian serious injuries increased from the preceding year. We had 28 versus 26 in 2024. Bicycle serious injuries actually decreased to 4 from 7 the previous year. Looking at annual fatalities, annual pedestrian fatalities were 11 in 2025. Again, this is not formal data yet because it hasn't been finalized. However, that represents obviously a decline from 2024 when we had 14. So it appears we had 11, which is very good news. Bicycle fatalities, however, went up 1, 2025 to 3, and previously in 2024 we had 2. In terms of total crashes for the 4-county CRTPA region, those actually seem to be decreasing within the region. So that is good news, as you see there. You can see that dip in 2020, and that is a reflection, as you all know, of the year of COVID, and some of that was going on, and people driving less and working from home, and changes in the data we've seen. Now, digging a little bit deeper with regards to the fatalities for pedestrians and bicyclists last year, as I mentioned before, we had 11 fatalities for pedestrians in 2025. 6 of those fatalities actually occurred in Gadsden County. 5 of those 6 fatalities occurred on US 90. The other 5 fatalities in the region for pedestrians were in Leon County. With regards, again, to bicycle fatalities in 2025, 2 of those occurred in Leon County. 1 of those occurred in Gadsden County. One thing I'd like to say or let you all know is that the CRTPA staff actually reviews, once they're available, the crash reports for all these incidents. So we actually go over them and we look at what the situation was, and if there were anything that draws our attention that could lead us to actually pursuing some type of action to prevent these specific injuries, fatalities in the region. Now, the annual adoption of our safety targets provides our agency to go over what we're doing to actually address the issue of safety, not just the CRTPA, but our transportation partners. So I'm going to briefly go over some of the efforts, many of which you're familiar with. Newly funded safety projects. Highland Park Drive in Leon County, that was a TA, or a Transportation Alternatives Program, funded project that received funding for sidewalk. Bluntstown Highway, we know there's been some crashes that have happened out there, including for vulnerable roadway users. Lighting improvements have been funded in 2026 for that portion of that corridor, Bluntstown Highway. And on I-10 at the Ocklackney River Bridge, high friction surface treatment is proposed to be added to add safety for all approaches on the bridge on I-10 going over the Ocklackney River. With regards to safe routes to school projects, the City of Tallahassee was successful in getting funding for sidewalk construction, both for Springwood Elementary School as well as Hawkrise Elementary School. CRTPA regional events. Now, the CRTPA goes out and coordinates helmet fitting and training events. That is largely through the efforts of CRTPA staff member to my left, Ms. Suzanne Lex, as well as with the assistance of Yolanda. and we held a number of events that have actually given out helmets as well as trained folks within the four-county area to go out and do some helmet fitting events, because we can actually relatively easily get from the state of Florida helmets to give away. So that's a great initiative. Additionally, HVE, high visibility enforcement efforts, are continuing in Leon County on high crash corridor roads for vulnerable roadway users. And those efforts are being undertaken by Tallahassee Police Department as well as the Leon County Sheriff's Office. Safety studies and projects. The CRTPA's Safe Routes, Safe Streets and Roadways for All SS4A plan that was adopted about 3 years ago, that is currently being updated to update the HIN or high injury network data. SS4A implementation grant as well as planning grant. As you are all probably aware, around Christmas time this year, very recently we received positive news that from North Monroe, the $21 million total grant was actually approved for funding on North Monroe. That was a grant that the CRTPA previously submitted. We resubmitted it, this time using Leon County, working with Leon County, so that agency is actually going to be managing that project. That is a great project, as we know, because that's along a corridor that is on the HIN or high injury network. Additionally, in terms of a planning study, CRTPA resubmitted also SS4A grant for a planning study on West Tennessee, another high injury network roadway, and we were successful in those efforts. Again, very good news. Now, the North Monroe Street Safety Study, which is adopted in 2024, that plan, we are currently updating that to phase 2 to actually refine some of the recommendations with regards to intersections as well as some crossings for vulnerable roadway users. And the idea behind this is that the recommendations coming out of this phase 2 of the plan will actually go into and feed into that $20 million grant that we received from North Monroe. So it'll refine some of the improvements that are going forward for that grant. Regional trail expansion. Wakulla Springs Trail construction funding was recently funded. US 90 Trail, which is in eastern Leon County, we have design that is funded. The segments, 3 segments for that project are there, identified for design. Tallahassee to Havana Trail, there are 2 segments on there, one in Gadsden County, one in Leon County. Funding, SunTrails funding for 2 phases of those segments were funded and are fully underway, both by Gadsden County as well as the CRTPA's managing the project development and environment portion of that in Leon County, which is really an environmental study. And then finally, US 90 West Trail from Chattahoochee to Quincy. A planning study was initiated by the CRTPA using one of our general planning consultants. That is underway. In the next couple of months, you're going to be finding out about some public involvement efforts associated with this project, important project, extending the regional trailway network within the 4-county area westward all the way to Chattahoochee. Other efforts, CRTPA continues on its website to have a specific page dedicated to safety that speaks about the projects underway, how folks can get involved. We update that page. Additionally, you all heard last month at the CRTPA retreat about the CRTPA dashboard that we have being developed by Urban SDK, providing speed data on some of the major roadway corridors in Leon County, as well as some crash data and locations. Additionally, I want to emphasize again that we are reviewing crash reports for the region, and again, looking at some of the crashes that are going on, looking for trends that are going on. And as you all, one of those efforts that we're focusing on is with regards to the increasing e-bike crashes that are occurring not just in the region, but actually throughout our nation. Now, getting back to the purpose of today's agenda item, we are seeking that the board adopt a resolution, the safety targets that were developed, as long as, again, a long-term safety goal for the region. And that said, I'm available, as well as other staff, to answer any questions.
The markers made 5% reduction of what number?
5% of each adopted target every year.
Of the previous year?
Excuse me?
Is it 5% of the previous year?
Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so it's 5% of the previous year, but we're going up in some
The
cases?
target goes down.
Target.
No, meaning the trend is going up.
Yes. For certain things, indeed, yeah. And this is consistent with other agencies and like the CRTPA in terms of traffic fatalities in the country.
Why wouldn't we do 5% of the previous year? Previous year's actual numbers, instead of 5% of the targeted numbers in the previous year?
Yeah, we're doing 5% of the target that we adopted every year.
That's-
We're reducing it to improve and seek.
But we're not meeting the targets, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yep, so
So
this-
again, the question is, why wouldn't we go 5% of the actual numbers instead of 5% of the targeted numbers?
Well, we had started at one point fairly even with the target. If you recall, part of this, especially out to 2040, when we started the work on the Safe Streets for All Action Plan back in 2023, that was actually a requirement from the federal legislation that we had to have, as part of our goals, that 0 fatalities by 2040. Once we started this, as we see the trends go up, we could always do that if we wanted to, but as Greg showed you, the nature of fatalities especially tends to jump up and down. Greg, can you go back to that chart? When we talked about this a little bit at the retreat, I believe we had 63 or 65 in 2024. That number actually dropped down to 49 in 2025. So when one more, Greg. There we go. So next year, when 2022 rolls off of that average, our 5-year rolling average will go down. We could go back and do it that way. This just has not been the practice. Because when we first started this, you see 54 fatalities. We jumped up 2 or 3 years. Now we're trending back down for that single year. So, and as we've talked about before, I despise the word target. Just because it sounds like, that's what we're shooting for, so to speak. I think a couple of years we tried to change that to projection and got our hands slapped because that's not the official nomenclature we're supposed to use. But it is, I understand that it doesn't really follow logic, but sometimes the federal requirements don't necessarily follow logic.
All right, I'll tell you what, let me get a motion first and then we have discussion. Motion for staff recommendation made by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by School Board Member Lawson-Cox. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slay, could you share with us the crash data of the individual fatalities? I mean, not today, but
Sure,
just through the board.
they're public record.
Okay.
One of the caveats there is they're not available even to us 60 days after the date of the crash. That's by state statute.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know the best way to do that. I mean, we could send you all just a ream of crash reports. I guess let me ask you, what are you exactly looking for to figure out the best way to give it to you?
Sure, and you might have this information. You mentioned reviewing kind of for patterns and so forth. I mean, do we have information on how many of the road fatalities were crossing the street or on a street that didn't have a sidewalk versus an e-scooter, like those sorts of granular details?
They do. The e-scooters, more so e-bikes, that's kind of iffy. And that's one of the debate that's going on right now is there's not a place on the crash report to identify an e-bike. Generally, we rely on the narrative that goes along with the crash report. A lot of times the officer, and I think Jack's actually been taking a deep dive into this. Sometimes the officer will list it as an e-bike, sometimes not. But there's always a variety of different crashes or reasons. One of the things we always struggle with, especially with the fatal crashes, is by and large, they're generally scattered. And what we see, like in the rural areas, a lot of them are related to lane departure where somebody runs off the road, either overcorrects, flips their car, or runs off the road into a tree. But yeah, we could probably put together some kind of summary of the various types of crashes and things if you want us to. I don't think that'd be that big of a deal. I'm looking at Jack because he's our crash report expert.
No,
I wanted to use that term,
He
but I
didn't mention
thought that might
Chattahoochee
help.
either, so that's helpful. We've had that question before about trying to look for some kind of magic formula or some kind of, specific issue that kind of falls. But they're across the board. You have people who are distracted. You have people who are on alcohol. Some are internal distractions, like on the phone. Some are external. So there's no one thing that you can point to that says that here's the issue for those folks in terms of fatalities or serious injuries. And in general, pedestrians are 50-50 with at fault. Pedestrians don't necessarily cross in the crossway, and if they do, sometimes they cross against the red light. So there's no real magic bullet, as it were, that's going to be kind of the answer for everything that's out there in terms of crashes, because they are everywhere. There are some corridors that are specifically targeted in terms of where we see those in terms of trends: North Monroe Street, Pensacola Street, West Tennessee Street, Capitol Circle, Crawfordville Road starting to show up now. So we know where they're at. And in fact, some of the high injury network that Greg talked about before that we're updating, there's within the top 10 projects or so, we're kind of struggling with where we're going to go, because we're addressing the top 5 or 6 corridors already in that high injury network with these projects that we're working on. So we see where they're at. We know where they're going. It's just a matter of doing an analysis to see what we can do to improve that. It could be lighting, could be sidewalks, could be just better navigation. So yeah, it's across the board, but we can pull something together, I think, that would show you the kind of major issues that are identified. Alcohol and distracted driving aren't as big as people think they are. But again, we have people who are out walking who are drunk, or riding bikes who are drunk. So that's not necessarily just specific to the car driver.
Okay, yeah, that would be helpful. Just that data on if it was alcohol related, pedestrian at fault crossing on a mid-block type of thing, all that sort of data would be helpful. And then I wanted to ask about Highway 90 specifically in Gadsden. Are those all different locations in Gadsden, or?
Yes, sir, and that's, honestly, we've been a bit puzzled with that one ourselves. We had, I think, in the city of Quincy, we had 2 within about 1,000 feet of one another within a couple of months. We had one in Gretna, and this is where it gets kind of interesting dealing with these. There was a fatality. There was a convenience store there in Gretna, and law enforcement was able to capture video from the convenience store. The gentleman walked out and just collapsed in the street and was hit several minutes later. Nobody saw him fall, and apparently that was alcohol related, if I recall. The original thought was he had some sort of medical episode, but turns out, I guess, he passed out and was hit by a car laying in the middle of the road. So it's interesting, to be honest with you. It's maddening sometimes to look through these crash reports. There's a uniform crash report, but we rely a lot on the narratives that the officer writes up. And sometimes on a fatality, it'll be 4 or 5 lines. Sometimes it'll be 5 paragraphs. So that, Jack especially spends a lot of time going through those. But I think we could put together a summary or something to give you at least some general ideas. But what you're going to find is if there's 50 different or 49 different fatal crashes, there's probably 40 different reasons.
And Commissioner Matlow, if I could just add, for staff that look at these reports, it's really frustrating because, for instance, with regards to the large amount of pedestrian fatalities last year in Gadsden County, some of the changes that we could make with regards to the presence of sidewalks or crosswalks, things like that, often they're so scattered, and those amenities, we call them that, which should be on every major road anyway, are present. And often, as you were saying, it's a situation where someone, not always, but someone may be under the influence, walking across the street, and realistically, it's very difficult to effectuate a change for something like that happening, to be honest. It's frustrating, yeah.
I understand, and thank you for that information. Just having to be able to better wrap our heads around what's happening and know that we're on the right targets, and I support the motion on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you. I think I mentioned this before in a past life. I worked in the DOT safety office. I want to ask Bryant, does a safety office still exist?
Yes,
at DOT? So that's where the crash reports go. and they're the ones who code them and do all of those things. And I think that what we're asking staff to do, they're probably already doing, because they're also trying to identify improvements that might be needed to make these kinds of things happen. And I think that, and it is public information, so going to the safety office would probably be the most pristine place to get it, because they have analyzed it, determined, because at the time that I was there, they were getting ready to implement GIS at that point, and I know they've probably done a great job by now of that. So I think that that's also very important. And I think it's also important to note that there are just some things we're just not going to be able to do. And I know we want to know what we can do to make it happen, to make it safer. And in Gadsden County, of course, you know, US 90 runs from the Leon County line all the way up to Chattahoochee. I think that's probably about, 40 miles or so. So that's a long stretch of land, 90, you know, to keep up with what's happening in those areas. And not just 90. I know in this case there were a lot of 90, but just last week there were 2 fatalities that occurred on Pat Thomas Highway. Someone was driving the wrong way. How do you prevent that? You know, these kind of things happen, and that cost 2 people their lives right there near the detention center, I believe, over in that area. So the safety office, I'm just reminded that the DOT safety office, they have this information. They're the ones who get it from the officers, and they do this analysis as well. So we don't overwork staff in having y'all pull all these crash reports and put your eyes on them. They have some, I'm sure, some analysis that could be helpful in providing the information that Commissioner Matlow has asked for, and also just visualize and keep in mind what we're talking about. I know much of 90 does have sidewalks, but if somebody steps off the sidewalk or a car drives up on the sidewalk, how do you prevent that? So we do what we can as best we can. Education is also very key as well, such as the bike helmets and what have you. But, you know, we're passing out helmets, but we got people who don't have bikes. You know, so we gotta, you know, keep the cart after the horse, so to speak, for safety reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Yes, sir.
What I'd propose, Mr. Matlow, if that's good with you, is we'll start with 2023, because that's the last kind of finalized year, and put something together and see if that's what you all want to see, and then maybe if you'd like, we can expand that from there.
Any other comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We have a motion?
I thought we did. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we made
I missed it.
All those
long
in-
time ago.
Yeah, the Coxes made the
That's
motion.
right.
The Coxes took care of that.
Yeah. All those
Me
in
and my
favor of the motion on the
cousin.
floor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, unanimously. Item number 9, FDOT report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The department's got a couple of upcoming letting projects scheduled for the March 2026 letting we'd like to bring to the attention of this board today. First one is in Gadsden County. It's going to be basically the realignment of Dover Road and US 90.
What's the name of the road?
Dover. Both the north and south legs of Dover Road will be realigned with US 90, as well as the construction of left turn lanes at all 4 approaches of that intersection, as well as a local business that's in that vicinity. A turn lane will be provided there to help facilitate the safety of that project. Again, that's scheduled for a March letting. Current construction estimate for that project is $5.5 million. The other project we'd like to bring to the board's attention today is a resurfacing project on Capitol Circle Northeast. This is from Centerville to Thomasville Road. In addition to the standard resurfacing improvements we have scheduled, we're looking at intersection lighting at 6 intersections along that segment, as well as safety improvements with the installation of directional median openings at 2 locations, as well as right-in, right-out restrictions at several of those locations to improve the overall safety of the corridor. That one is scheduled for, or has a construction estimate of $6.5 million. And again, both of those are scheduled to let next month. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. David, Commissioner.
Thank you. Are those projects available for us to look up and see some of the detail?
One of the projects is on our Northwest Florida Roads website, the Capitol Circle resurfacing. The Dover Road project, I can provide you the project manager's information if you'd like to get additional details.
Now, the Capitol Circle one I'll look up.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Executive Director report.
Just a couple of things. I did want to express our appreciation to the district on the North Monroe resurfacing project. If you recall, as part of the implementation plan that we did last year, there was a lot of modifications to the median, especially north of Lakeshore Drive up to, give or take, the interstate. The department was kind enough to incorporate those as part of the resurfacing job, so we won't have to worry about that on the implementation for the SS4A. And I know there was a couple of comments made at that meeting, and I've seen a few floating around about why we didn't incorporate that project into the resurfacing project, and the simple answer is timing. That project is scheduled to be believed to be let in November or December of this year for the resurfacing. The sidewalks and the other improvements associated with the SS4A, we still have to go through grant award, and we also still have to go through design. So there was really no practical way that we could make those timelines line up. If we would have been successful last year when we submitted, or now the year before last, we would have tried very hard to do that, but with the timing of the award being announced in December, we just weren't able to make those two happen. It's a bit of a bureaucratic answer, but if you get questions about it out in the public, that's the simple fact. And the money was not available as the resurfacing project was moving forward.
Commissioner Minor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on what Mr. Slay said, I attended the public meeting on the North Monroe resurfacing, which is well attended. And that discussion came up among some of the residents that were there. But, you know, as Mr. Slay said, we're very grateful for FDOT District 3 for adding some of the pieces in this SS4A application as part of the resurfacing project, because that does free up some money that we had allocated under SS4A for that $21 million to go down the list on safety improvements. So that really does help us. I know when RSNH and CRTPA worked on the initial SS4A application, there was easily $50 million worth of safety improvements that they had identified. So the $21 million is a gift, and we're grateful for it. But anything that we're grateful for FDOT taking some of those pieces and moving forward with it for the resurfacing next year, because that allows us to go down the pecking order on the list and take care of more safety improvements for that corridor. So big thanks to FDOT District 3. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask what the status of funding for Orange Avenue is. And you know, I don't say that facetiously. It's getting worse. My neighborhood empties out onto Orange Avenue, and a lot of times it's difficult for us to get out from Walnut and Orange Avenue unless you go to the traffic light at T-Pain Way and Orange Avenue. So I know that we're one of the priority projects, Greg, but do we have any idea of when funding might be made available?
No, sir.
For that project?
As we've talked about, you know, design is underway on one of the western sections, but we're still waiting for right-of-way, which is, I think, around $80 million. Okay. And then ultimately construction, which I think is around another $100 million or so, give or take. So it's basically sitting there waiting at this point for a major funding injection.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have anything? Staff?
CRTPA information is number 11. You have a chance to review that. 12, anything from members? Commissioner Minor, you got anything for us? Okay, anything from members?
Just real quick.
Yes, sir.
More than likely, I'm going to say 80% chance that we cancel the March meeting. We'll have some more stuff coming to you all, and well, if you want to meet, we can meet. But we do have some exciting stuff coming up, probably in April or May. We had a meeting this morning with RSNH to go over some of the improvements to North Monroe, so those are coming along really well, and also a couple of other items. But if you're all okay with that, we will more than likely cancel.
So move.
All right.
Don't do a motion.
No,
just in
we
case.
won't do a motion, but we'll most likely cancel the meeting. Anything else from staff or members? Seeing none, we're adjourned.
Okay.